So, hello and welcome to another episode of From the CISO'S Lens. We basically use this platform to understand the macro environment that CISOs operate in and guide CISO strategy by making observations with respect to existing security environments and, of course, analyzing existing security postures of organizations. So, I have with me Prasad, who's a CISO at Instasafe. Welcome, Prasad. And
Thank you.
we'll be having a very insightful discussion on what can be called the most discussed topic of the year. So what we will be discussing about will strike a chord with organizations of almost every size operating from anywhere in the world. That's remote work and how it has affected companies from a security perspective. Now, in retrospect, of course, the last year has been an eye opener for companies as to how underprepared their security defenses were when an emergency scale up occurred. And of course, this has led to nothing short of a cybersecurity revolution over the past year. And the inevitable shift of hardware to SaaS that many were predicting would happen in the next 5 years or so, it has happened in a matter of months. And this was obviously
Yes.
because of the vulnerabilities that existing security solutions started showing when a complete move outside the defined on-premise perimeters happened. Now, of course, this shift was inevitable, more so because legacy-based solutions really couldn't keep up with the existing digital transformation. So, in the light of such the entire remote work revolution exposing VPN vulnerabilities, what exactly do these vulnerabilities encompass according to you?
Thanks, Pratheek, for arranging this conversation. Indeed, a good topic to discuss upon. We know vulnerability means it's just nothing but a bug sitting in the system, which exposes a way in which a user can exploit the system. Or it could be a data leak, or it could be a way in which you can exploit to get into a system. Or in this case, if it's a VPN vulnerability, you're getting into the whole VPN network itself, right? The problem with a typical VPN network today is once you are inside the VPN network, you are getting access to a number of systems, a number of applications, and that gives an opportunity for a hacker to laterally move from one machine to another machine and take over a good amount of machines out here. So talking about VPN in specific, I would like to show you maybe exploit-db.com, how easy it is for a hacker to identify a vulnerability and make use of the exploit using the same vulnerability. For example, each of these exploits out here correspond to a particular vulnerability in VPN. So what I've done here, I've gone to exploit-db.com. I searched for VPN, and it showcases a number of exploits out here. Each of these are corresponding to a certain vulnerability that is being publicly exposed or publicly shared by these companies today. So 2-3 points out here. Even today, all the companies don't know all the vulnerabilities they have. There's a VAPT that is being keep on happening with these companies, and they keep on identifying the new issues, and they come with fixes. And most of the issues, fortunately, are being publicly shared. Companies are disclosing that they have identified a vulnerability, this is the fix, and this is the issue. And in the same process, security researchers are identifying or creating exploits to consume this vulnerability and exploit the system and share across the platforms like this. So it has two sides here, right? The same scripts can be consumed by security researchers as well as the hackers. Unfortunately, all these bugs or the vulnerabilities are not patched by everyone around the world. There are a good number of companies, or including the enterprise companies, whose assets can be taken over, or VPNs technologies can be taken over using this some of these vulnerabilities out here. Yeah, thanks, Prateek. This is what I wanted to share.
I mean, this is really revealing information. And
Yes,
of
one
course,
more
one
point.
follow up.
Yes, one more point out here is it is very simple to use these scripts. Only thing you need is you just have to they have given the way in which, I'm just taking one example, right? All of these are like this
Okay.
only.
Right.
You may have to send 2-3 arguments to it, or sometimes you just have to give a username and password to it. Sometimes you just need to give IP address and say which port you want to try attacking. That's it. It is that's all you need to do with these scripts. You don't need to know how these scripts are functioning or anything like that, right?
Right.
And it
Right.
is very easy to identify which port your VPN server is listening, because you can just execute the tools like nmap or any other port
Right.
probing tools, which will actually tell you, yeah, your customer target has this particular VPN technology listening in this particular port. And at times it
Right.
shares the version as well, which is making the life of hackers easy.
Right.
Yeah.
So obviously another follow-up that would be there is that what could be the cost of a potential breach due to these vulnerabilities?
It varies. For example, IBM has done a study in this regard recently. So, according to them, in India, the total cost of a data breach in 2020 is around 14 crores. It is the average of
Wow.
all the breaches happened. They have done the study in India. So, in US, it was around 3.86 million dollar per breach. So, the cost of a breach is very high, and
Right.
organizations should be well aware of this number, primarily because
Right.
they sometimes stay away from spending enough on cybersecurity. Every project or
Right.
every activity in IT space should have a budget allocated for the cybersecurity activity. As a CISO, this is what I suggest everyone out here.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Now, of course, the effect on mid-size and smaller companies would be even more pronounced. I mean, even a smaller scale of breach would damage their operations irretrievably, maybe.
And yeah, but again, when one of these breach happens, right? So it is not a 1 day recovery or 2 day recovery. Sometimes the companies
Right.
takes months to recover, even 6 months to recover, because the amount of data they lose, or amount of disruptions they have in the whole supply chain. For example, if this app goes down and the whole data get corrupted, it's not easy to bring up the operation on the next day, right? It takes time. So that
I
is
mean,
how, yeah.
yeah, I mean, so another important point that we can consider here is that the detection of even such malicious acts, the detection of such incidents takes a long amount of time as well. So just detecting that
Yes.
a breach has happened and then actually working towards recovery is a long drawn process.
Yes, it has
So,
happened in the past many times, right? Yeah.
right. So in this regard, if we move on to a, a narrow perspective to Instasafe, and Instasafe, as we know, it follows what is called as the zero trust model, which is sort of operationalized by leveraging what's called as a software-defined perimeter. Now,
Yes.
what exactly do we mean when we say an SDP or a zero trust model, and what are the basic core principles being followed here?
Okay. So the idea of zero trust here is not to trust anyone. Do not trust any device coming in. Do not trust any user coming in. You validate the posture of the user, validate the posture of the device, ensure that it follows the exact policies. For example, the user is accessing from a particular geo region. And
Right.
after that, after these validations, including the device posture validation, you establish the connection with your application. So that's the whole idea about zero trust. You don't trust anyone. Establish your trust on each and every connection that you do dynamically, right? And a few other aspects here, which I would like to cover here is, okay, so zero trust has been there for a very long while, right? So what Instasafe has done is Instasafe followed the whole zero trust architecture put forward by NIST and later by CSA in terms of SDP, software defined perimeter, right? And as per software defined perimeter, there are few additional core principle that has been put forward on top of the zero trust, which has been existing for a long time. So some of these very important items are like, I would start with blackening. So it is very important to make sure your infrastructure is not visible to a hacker, right? If you're an organization, what happens many cases, your VPN endpoint is visible out in the internet. I'll take you through an example
Right.
maybe, on this webinar. Uh, and many cases, your servers or your applications have their IP open out in the internet. These are becoming the entry point for the hackers. This
Right.
blackening process is all about hiding entire IT infrastructure, applications and servers behind a SDP gateway. And only element that is listening to internet is SDP gateway. And the SDP gateway is protected by a dropout firewall. So how does that matter?
Right.
Any traffic that's coming in, including a port probing request from a tool like Nmap, is dropped off. So nobody in the internet is aware of the existence of this whole IT infrastructure. And then how a client device can connect to it, there's a technology that has been used. It's called single packet of authorization. When the right packet comes in, it actually identify the device and then open up the TCP port dynamically and establish the tunnel, and then the application traffic flows. This is
Right.
then I would like to touch upon a few more aspects based on our time. I'll cut short, but still let's touch upon a few of the basic stuff out here, right? So the SDP also ensures that we have a data plane separately taken care of and a authentication layer, the control plane separately taken care of. The authentication layer is ensuring the posture of the device and user before a connection is being established in the control in the data plane. So how is it done? The control plane has its own decision point, its own policy point, which ensure that the user authentication is taken care, making use of multi-factor authentication. And later it verifies the device posture by executing commands in the user device. And after that, it communicates to the gateway sitting inside the customer premises. A user is coming from this IP address with this posture, and you give this particular policy-based access. And after that, the whole access is being established. So this mechanism add to the protection of the whole process. Then another aspect we have here in Instasafe's solution is the privacy first. So many vendors actually forgot to implement it in the right fashion, I would say. Like when we implement, when we have the data traffic flowing from the user device to the application sitting inside the customer premise, we don't need a middle device out here. And we should not have either actually, right? Because it's a customer communication, or it's it's organization's traffic flowing from organization's employee to the organization's application. And there should not be a vendor device sitting in between and listening to the traffic and then and doing a processing on top of it. It adds to the privacy, or it is a breach of privacy for the organization. So Instasafe has taken care of it very well. We have made sure that the whole control plane and the whole user interaction, everything is taken out of the data traffic, and data travel directly from the user device to the customer premises. It adds to the speed as well, and it is a highly encrypted MTLS traffic that is being flowing in. Anything else? And one more point is the all-in-one picture, right? When we implement Instasafe SDP, we have every element out there. You don't need to go for another partner or another vendor to construct one part of it. The whole zero trust architecture is present inside the whole ZTA platform that Instasafe is putting forward. For example, we have Instasafe Authenticator, and we do support Google and Microsoft and other authenticators. We do have support for multi-factor authentication in multiple ways, like SMS, email, and other aspects. Where Instasafe has our own IDP for user management, user group management, though we support AD and Azure AD and other third-party solutions. So the holistic picture is coming out there, right? And the whole operation is very simple as well for an end user, and we'll go through that. Yes.
I mean, this is really interesting from the perspective of an integrated security architecture. And of course, we'll be covering each of these features in later episodes as well in much better depth. But
yes.
Now, coming back to the topic of remote access and remote users, we understand that the remote user is the new attack surface. They are much more vulnerable. And in this context, legacy web security solutions often miss out on being compatible with this new transformation. So can you pinpoint on like any such instances?
Sure. So one challenge for CISOs out here is to identify were to spend when it comes to cybersecurity, right? Like you just said, perimeter security is becoming a big challenge, and at the same time, the companies have to take every applications out into the internet in this time frame, right? COVID pandemic forced everyone to do that. So companies cannot go and verify security posts of every application that has been taken outside. So best way is to make sure the perimeter is completely strongly. I mean, it's very strong and it's taking care of every access that is coming in. I would like to show you one example where the whole perimeter of an organization can get breached. Let me share my screen.
Sure.
I'll put this down. Here it is one of the well-known VPN vendors Prime page when we enter this login page, right? So, and this page is exposed for many of the organizations today out into the internet because employees have to log in, partners have to log in, suppliers have to log in to connect to their applications or to connect to their network. And it is protected by username and password. So I'm just trying out with a random user and a random password out here.
Right.
So at this point, I don't know. So permission is being denied. So let's go and add this user. Yeah, what I'm saying is a hacking methodology. I'll get into Kali Linux. I'm making use of one of the script that I showed you sometime back from exploit-db. It is applicable for any of these versions of the particular firewall software. And it is very easy to find the endpoints of this. In this particular case, it's very easy to find them. There's a Google Doc available. If you put in title, please log in, use FTM push into the Google, it lists every organization's endpoints out in the Google. So we are just going to Google. Just going back and checking that string. So each of these URLs are leading you to different organizations' login pages. Right. So this is just one example. I'm not pinpointing a vendor here. This is it's a generic scenario. How VPN endpoints can be found. It's very easy. And there are multiple scanners we can run to identify, to enumerate the versions, to enumerate and understand which exploit work out there, and then try getting into the VPN network. So what we're going to do here is we are going to add the guest user with a password that we're going to set. So the hacker is not aware of it. I mean, the admin of the VPN network or the users of the VPN network is not aware of a hacker coming in and getting into the whole network out here. That's a dangerous part of it. A unknown person coming to a network and be connecting his device into the VPN. We just connected to the VPN network with the user that we created. So you just saw it was a very simple process, and you don't need a big level of skill to do this operation, right? So that is the dangerous part out here. Yeah. So this is where technology like blackening helps organizations.
Of course, yeah.
So I would like to take you through one more item here. So when organizations' data get leaked, what happens with it, right? Maybe I'll show you that because we should discuss that as well to understand the complete impact of a hacking event. What happens after a hacking, right? So recently we went through many breaches, right? So this is something happened very few days back. In Domino's, there was a data breach.
Right.
There was a user who came into a forum and shared, I have got data from Domino's. I'm going to sell it for this amount of price. People started questioning him in the forum. Hey, show us the sample. So what he did, he created a Onion page. Onion page is nothing but a website in the dark web. And he gave a
Right.
form. You just put any mobile number out there, I'll give you the data. So it was working.
Wow.
Personally, even my email ID showed my previous data. So I experienced the same thing with MobiKwik in the past as well. Later, he started selling it for individual users. It's like a B2C process. The person is selling data to everyone out in the internet for a certain amount. Only thing is you need to
Right.
go to the dark web and start doing the transaction with him. So then there are markets for this operation as well. There's a dark leak market again available in the dark web. We saw earlier breach happening in the recent past.
Right.
And there was a leak on PVR, there was a leak on Domino's, which I just discussed. There are many leaks. So if you want to buy any of this data, you can go here. Sorry. And you can buy the leak. In other words, you can buy the user data. The whole
Right.
transaction happens here in Bitcoin. Mostly it will be in cryptocurrency. Why? Because the user cannot be tracked, and it's all illegal operations happening out in the
Right.
darknet. So yeah, this is the seriousness of it, right? So if your data is leaked, it's going to different places, sometimes to darknet, and then it's getting sold out there. And there are hackers who
Right.
buy this data and run multiple other programs to individually hack each of these users or consume their users. When MobiKwik hack happened, there were stories in the darknet forums where people claimed they used this information and took bank loans on the user's name because you had your complete
Wow.
KYC document, like your
Right.
PAN card to your checkbook copy to Aadhaar to anything that you need, right? So
Right.
since you have the whole documents available, hackers started taking digital loans, which is the new thing available for every banks in today's world.
Right.
Yeah, that's the seriousness
I
of
mean, if it's as easy as that, I mean, it should definitely be a cause of concern for any CIO, any CISO, or even any CEO as such.
exactly.
So, of course, now moving on, if a prime requirement for global productivity for companies while working remotely, it's the need for elastic and scalable solutions, right?
Yes, yes,
And
yes.
the problem, as we've seen with many organizations, is that they are still trying to secure their cloud apps and databases with hardware based security appliances, which they had invested in, say, decades ago.
Yeah.
And in this regard, we know that for remote workers, of course, traffic is backhauled through these appliances via VPNs, and this causes inevitable issues in user experience. And
Yes.
even the scale up of such solutions in cloud environments, it's a very tedious and it's a very capital intensive task. So, my question is, how does a zero trust solution match up to these challenges?
Okay. So, how easy is it to scale is your question here, right? So,
Right,
Instasafe has implemented for around 50,000 users in a very short time, in 2-3 weeks of time. That was the speed that we could achieve. So, one major advantage we have is the whole SDB controller is Docker based. And as you know,
okay,
it is highly scalable, and we can instantiate more and more Dockers based on the workload that we are getting in on the
right,
go, right? And the SDB controllers that we keep in the customer premises, which has been managed and provisioned by the customer, is completely horizontally scalable. So when more load is coming in, we can add one more machine to it seamlessly without having any downtime. So if there is a huge increase in the workload, we can keep scaling,
right,
and there should not be any hindrance to existing operations. That is how we are able to scale up. So it was a big challenge for most of the CISOs because even in the case which I said 50,000, people had to move, like in the sense the organization had around 1,000 people or 1,000 remote workers consuming the assets remotely, consuming the applications remotely. On one fine day,
right,
due to the pandemic, they had to scale up. every organization went through it. So every CISO had that pain of remote access being scaled up, and it is
Of
being
course.
and unfortunately most of the companies went for VPN based technologies, or they chose to scale up their existing traditional methodologies,
Right.
which has opened up the vulnerabilities also in these platforms. That's one
Right.
concern I have for the entire set of organizations who went for it.
Right. So, of course, as a follow-up, my question would be, how does the user experience, as in the end user experience, also the admin experience, change when a company shifts from or upgrades to a zero trust solution like Instasafe from a VPN? And when I say a user experience, again, I do mean both from the perspective of management by a security team and the
Mhm.
end user experience in terms of increased or decreased latency among other considerations.
It is a big change. Uh,
Okay.
and in a way, it was a very difficult time to manage VPN technologies, and it is becoming very simple when it comes to instance of SDP. I'll explain that part. If you have to
Right.
connect to 5 different applications located across 5 different data centers or cloud environment, typically in a VPN world, the user have to connect to 5 different VPN servers, one after other, and then access the application. The user experience is not so great out there. When it comes
Right.
to Instasafe SDP, what we're doing here is we are holistically pulling the access from different places and showing everything to one single dashboard to the end user. In other words,
Right.
when the end user access SDP agent, he log in with his multi-factor authentication, and once he is logged in, he's been presented with a dashboard, a single page, on which we have one icon representing each of the application that he has access to. And on a single click, he's accessing the application irrespective of where the application is coming from. The application could be
Right.
hosted in India, or it could be hosted in America. There's no difference in the experience that he's feeling or he's going to experience out there. So that's about the user experience. When it comes to a admin or when it comes to a security team, it is very easy to onboard an application, or it is very easy to onboard the users and groups. We have
Right.
a admin UI, a single place where we are managing the all the users and all the user groups and policies and applications and the gateways. So everything is
Right.
segregated into multiple pages, and it's very intuitive and easy to use. So as part of onboarding an application, what is the process? Just 4 5 steps process out here. So we have to install the application inside the customer premises, and um, anyway, it is the traffic is getting routed via the controller, STP controller sitting inside the customer premises.
Right.
There is no work out there, because we are going to make sure that the application server is hidden behind the gateway. So only thing we are doing is we are installing the application on a server in the same network as the gateway, and later the whole set of work is happening at the controller side here. So we are adding the
Right.
gateway we are making sure that the gateway is connected to the controller. We are adding the users. We are adding the IDP policies for the users, creating the access policy for which user should access the particular application, and then
Right.
it is shared. Then that's all the process all here, right? So when the user logs in, he's going to see the application, because the controller takes care of the routing completely up to the application level.
Right.
When a user logs in, the controller looks for all the applications that he has access to, and it shares, right? The applications are directly shared to the user dashboard. So it is just a
Of
three
course.
four step process, mostly on the admin UI. We have to just onboard the user, onboard the gateway, onboard the application, and
Right.
connection is done.
I mean, definitely, it's an eye opener in terms of a much more seamless user experience. And
Yes.
of course, yeah, these are the number of questions that I have from my side. And with that, we come to a close of the session. Of course, thank you so much for your inputs, Prasad, and I'm sure that viewers would have found this session to be very insightful. And of course, we'll be back with more such interesting discussions and maybe such interesting and insightful live hacks or live exploits that CISOs can find to be revealing in terms of reprioritizing their security strategies. So thank you and goodbye.
Thank you, Pratheek. Thank you for your time too.